Hello, everyone. Welcome to my portion of the product drive talk. Today, I want to talk about this very important topic near and dear to my heart, how to lead with influence and say a positive no. Now, without further ado, let's dive in. So first, who am I? My name is Shyvee. I am a product manager at LinkedIn. I'm also an instructor at LinkedIn Learning, where I teach courses about product management and personal productivity. If you stay till the end of the talk, you'll receive a QR code to watch one of my courses for free on LinkedIn Learning. So stay tuned. I'm also the host of the PM Learning Series, a weekly programming where I talk to industry thought leaders in the product space to bring out the best in their minds to inspire current and aspiring product managers to level up. There's also a newsletter to recap all the learnings directly from my LinkedIn profile, so make sure you check them out. So over the years, I've worked with many organizations. The logos are, some of them are presented on this slide to share various product management tips and tricks. So I'm looking forward to connect with all of you, and obviously today to share how to lead with influence. So I want to start today's talk by talking a little bit about why influence is so important and what are some of the mindsets that we must embrace before we going into the tactics of mastering the arts of leading through influence. I really like the 5C framework, so I can't wait to dive in and share more with you. Now let's get started. Let's level set with why do we think influencing is so hard? Reflect back, over the past few months when you need to say no to someone, when you need to pitch an idea, when you need to ask for resource to work on your project or your product. What was the most difficult thing about influencing without authority? I think for me, on one side, there are just a lot of people that I need to convince, right? Engineering, design, marketing, content, data science. And a lot of times, because LinkedIn is a big company, I need to work with a lot of different product managers across the company, and each have their own responsibilities, priorities, roadmaps. And getting all of them together in one room and aligning on something is almost impossible, right? There are just way too many cooks trying to noodle on variations of the same recipe. Decision makings are also really complex and nuanced, right, in a metrics organization. But how to influence with our authority and leading through influence is the number one skill that most product managers need to learn and master in order to level up. So what can we do then to turn a tie, play a different game, and be a master influencer? I like to start with talking about these 4 mindsets. Let's going into details for each one of them. First, trust must be earned. What does that mean? That sounds so obvious, right? We feel like, you can't really just go in and talk to people about an idea if you don't already have the social currency, the social capital that you have with the other person. You cannot take it for granted that when you pitch an idea, people will just listen to you and will just say yes, right? So this is a notion of, building up some reserve, a social currency or social capital before you can ask. So there's a notion of a give and take balance in play here. I really like this trust equation that I put in on this slide. It entails different components. So on this side of the trust equation, is about how trustworthy are you. This is not for you to say, oh, I'm a trustworthy person. It's for the other person to judge you how trustworthy you are. And the 4 components are, first, do you have the right credibility or expertise? Do you have the right knowledge, and context about the project that you're working on to get enough, knowledge? Second, do you have reliability score? Are you a reliable person? That has to do with your action. Have you shown consistent action to step up and deliver? The third aspect, it's a little bit more the friendship side, right? A sense of intimacy, a sense of security and safety. Does the people feel like they connected to you, that they wanted to listen to you? Last but not least, the denominator of this equation is self-orientation. This is referring to, are you focused only on your needs, or you're oriented towards the others or the greater goods of the team? How much the other person trusts you is really depending on how much they perceive you as being totally self-oriented versus being other-oriented as well. So how do you find that right balance to achieve all four components to project trust and build your social currency? So first step, trust must be earned, not given, not taken for granted. Second element, second mindset, that I found the most important one actually, is to be able to commit to the problem, but not the solution. What does that mean? So many times we equate, influencing as able to sell an idea, driving home an agenda. You're always coming already with a solution that you're trying to get other people to buy in with you. But a lot of times, the more effective negotiation or influence is actually seeing influencing as a way to learn and negotiate. It's about making informed decisions by understanding the trade-offs between different options. So next time when you're trying to eagerly pitch your great idea, I encourage you to just take a step back and ask some questions. Ask what problems you're trying to solve before you present your solutions. We'll dive into more of that in the second part of the talk. Now, the third mindset is co-create and co-elevate. This is so important to commit that this solution is not just coming from you, but it is a shared solution that everybody contributed to be part of that shared roadmap. So this entails something that's a little bit contradictory to a lot of type A people, where we feel like we are the CEO of our idea, right? But in this case, you actually have to give up a little bit of your ownership in order to drive home, the better good and get alignment of the bigger idea. So instead of thinking of, getting credits for yourself and presenting your ideas, pushing others to align, think about how you can be here to serve as a servant leader. And how can you bring together different pieces of different idea to complement each other to come up with a better solution? Over time, people will notice that you are the glue who ties everything together, not just the obnoxious leader who tries to get credit for his or her own idea. Last but not least, the fourth mindset is thinking about influence as an iterative process, a marathon, not a sprint. So think about always repeating the same strategy and idea until it sticks to people's mind. Testing various ways to tell the same idea or continue to reiterate your idea until you find the right message that really resonates with others. Again, in the second part of the talk, very soon, we'll touch more about exactly how to do that. But think of it as a campaign, a marathon, not a sprint. You're in it for the long haul. Now, let's talk about the 5C framework. What does that entail and how we can put it into practice to master the art of influence now that you have the 4 mindset? All right, first C entails context. Just like Rome wasn't built in a day, influencing, especially with our authority, and it takes time to build trust, like we said, first mindset, doesn't just happen, right? You have to give the patience, you have to give the hard work to work up to it. And the first step in that process, in that journey, is seeking to understand first before you influence. What I mean by that is really just like how you emphasize with your users doing user interviews and as part of your product development, you need to interview or listen to your stakeholders by asking them thoughtful questions. I like to call this technique attunement. Actually came from Daniel Pink, one of the best-selling authors of motivation and a lot of other books. So counterintuitively, when you think about you want to pitch something, want to sell people something, you want to influence, push, a vector technique is actually by reducing your power, practicing attunement, meaning, you kind of lower down and asking others for feedback, giving a little bit of, notion of like, hey, I don't know if this idea will work, or highlighting, strategically certain weakness in your idea in order to draw out more participation, more empathy from your stakeholder. By doing so, when you practice powerless communication at the early stage of an influencing journey, you actually help help lower the offendance from your stakeholder, and they're more receptive to your idea. They want to contribute. They feel like they're part of it. They want to support you. So that's the first part. Understand first, influence later. The second part is actually having more awareness, both in terms of the situational awareness of the organization, as well as individual awareness of the stakeholder that you're talking to. So in terms of situational awareness, it's really about, how does the organization make decisions in the past? How does things work? How do you make decisions on what to build? How does the feature get shipped? It's very important to understand those contexts so that you can work more fluid within those shared, cultural and context of the organization. You're not running against an uphill. Individual awareness is really all about, understand the individual stakeholders' goals, hopes, priorities, what their fear, what their limitations are, what their concerns are. Again, you can ask a stakeholder about that. You might or might not need to frame as in like, tell me about your weakness, right? Nobody would really tell you that, because everybody have egos and you need to earn your trust to be able to ask that. But you can frame your approach as in, hey, I really want to make this work and solve this problem. Again, commit to the problem, but tell me more about what have you tried? What worked? What failed? What did you learn from the process? Is that important for you? Is that an important problem for you to solve? What are your priorities? What's stopping you from pursuing this path or that path, right? So framing your question is all about them. Hey, what have you tried? What have you worked? What's important for you? What worries you? That will give you more input. So context by understanding first and inference later. One of my favorite quotes, we all have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we should listen twice as much as we speak. Get the ratios right. And we usually do it reverse. We probably talk 2 times or 3 times more than we listen. So the lessons learned here is making sure you listen twice as much you speak. Now, the next C in the framework is connect. We touch a little bit about, in the trust equation, social capital must be earned. That means you need to get to know people at a personal level, and then such that you can work up your way of the trust hierarchy, right? How do you build that hierarchy quickly? If you only have limited time, or we will all work in a hybrid environment where you don't get to meet people in a personal setting in person anymore. So how do you build up the psychological safety quickly such that people can open up to you? I think having active listening skill, again, 2-to-1 ratio, can help, right? Projecting a positive energy, showing that you care. And then the key also is paying attention, to the quiet voice in the room. If it's a big room with 20 people, someone have not spoken at all, maybe you will pick up, offer them opportunities to speak, to show that you care, that you are host of the meeting, that you want to hear from everybody. You want to engage with your stakeholder early and often, such that they don't feel like they're missing out. They heard about this initiative from someone else. It's always better that it comes from you and that you're being proactive about it. Acknowledge things are complex, right? Highlight some of the weakness, highlight some of the assumptions. Don't try to hide things, from the stakeholder, because people are smart. They will notice that. So show people that you care and represent their point of view accurately. Don't try to reframe it, sugarcoating things, and obviously delegating decision-making to the respective function to make sure they feel like they are part of the team contributing to this greater vision. Last but not least, just thinking about co-elevating, your team, you're amplifying your team by, giving them kudos, listening to their feedback, representing them accurately. Next, the third C It's about choice. Now that you have assessed the situation, you understand, who you talk to, what you're trying to drive home, what problem you're solving, and a rough how of, you would go about, presenting your idea, your vision. Right now, you're at this crossroad of deciding what approach to take, who's on your side, who needs to, be influenced, who's more sort of swing and haven't really casted their votes yet. So here, it's very important to list down the stakeholders that actually maybe have a decision right to whether to go ahead with your proposal to fund your project, and then individually analyzing for each one of those stakeholders. What's top of mind for this person? What's motivating this person? How much do they know about, your idea, your project, the problem that you're solving for? And what would have been some of the potential resistance that this person might come across, might have? And all of this, you should have done your homework and should know, whether directly from that person or indirectly from the people that work with the person, the stakeholder, the executive that you're trying to convince. So you've done your homework, you know what motivates them, what they care, what their priorities are, what their resistance are, what options and alternatives you can offer. And last but not least, this part tends to trip people and also often get ignored, is what is the social distance between you and this person that you need to influence? Is it the first time that you're talking to this person, or you actually have some smaller touch points in between that shows that this person might be comfortable trusting you? So again, going back to that trust equation, do you have all the 4 elements? Are you credible? Have you been consistently, reliably, delivering value according to what you were saying? Do you, have the intimacy, the social, distance between you and the person? Are you thinking about the bigger team versus just you? So analyze that for all the stakeholders that you need to connect. Now, the 4th C is actually the most tactical C, which is about craft. How do you actually craft your message? What do you say? What techniques do you use to, in your messaging to help convince your stakeholder? Now, first of all, with regard to craft, we actually have a lot to talk about. But I like to get the first thing is, how do you get the framing right? A lot of times, again, coming back to that self versus other orientation, a lot of times we like to come across as like, I have this idea, my team did this, we won this. A better way to frame it is actually hearing from what they want and try to bring it together and as a unified vision, not so much us versus them. Right? So you start from a place of agreement, of consensus, and then gradually building up that story to elevate emotional impact, to show that we're aligned, where things are not aligned, where we need alignment. A lot of times when we give an elevator pitch or when we talk about our ideas, it's better that we only talk about an incremental portions. I say 20% here. There are new ideas that people have not heard about, but 80% should be established concepts that have already, talk about in various other contexts before this major presentation, whether it's in a document or a meeting. So people don't find it a surprise to see, really, really new things. People feel more comfortable to actually align with you and say yes and offer help when they are familiar with a concept. So very important to already done all the pre-socialization, 80%, before you even come to that big meeting where everyone reviews and give their perspectives. Now, the next part, I want to give you some very concrete techniques, which today we only have 25 minutes, so not a lot of time. And so I would want you to watch this 15-minute video from Sachin Racket, who's a former head of product for Sales Navigator, one of the star project at LinkedIn. He had given a really, really good talk to talk about 6 techniques you could actually craft your argument in a very compelling way, whether it's using data, social proof, stories, or verbatims. So make sure you check out this talk in the link from this talk. But coming back, so once you get your framing right, it's very, very important for you to understand that 60% of the presentation is about the substance of what you present. But 40%, sometimes even more, is about the style of how you present it. Does the style come across, as resonating with the stakeholder? Do some people love visuals and stories more than data? What is the right technique to use? And so check out Sachin's talk and make sure you get the percentage right and focus not just on the substance of what you want to talk about, but really the how, the delivery, the style. And a quick way before that big presentation, that big sharing, is to do a cocktail party test. What does that mean? That means, imagine before COVID, we usually go to, happy hours, and then we would say, hey, I had this idea from my friend, or sometimes you say you had this idea. What do you think? It's like a 1-minute conversation, sometimes 5-minute. That's how you would pre-socialize it. Let's say on Teams and Zoom and Slack, and just give people, like setting the context of like, hey, I've been thinking about this idea. What do you think? And get their feedback. And in the process, practicing the style, the delivery, right, to get your message across. Again, couldn't emphasize more. Check out this 15-minute talk from Sachin. Really, really helpful information. Now, a big part of today's talk is about how to say a positive no. So a lot of it is actually related to the craft, right? Like, how do you craft the message? But here's a formula that I can give you that I find really helpful. So 2 steps. First step, decide if you actually should say no. Like, right? Do you actually have time for this? Most of the time, maybe not. And are you the right person for this task? Sometimes it might be better for someone else to do it. And then last but not least, the most important prioritization criteria is, how does this request fit with your priorities and goals? If it does not fit with your priority and goals, very clear, you're not going to take on this task. But if it fits your goals, or if it helps you build social capital, as we mentioned about how important it is over time, maybe you will carve out time to do it. But here's a formula on how to say no productively and respectfully. I love this formula, yes, no, yes, from Dr. Bill Urey, who's a professor at Harvard Law School. So the first element of the yes formula is to signal that you have heard their requests. This comes, again, back to the emphasized part, to the listening part, to the 2-ear, 1 mouth, listening to speak ratio, right? Listen to what they have to say to signal that, hey, I've heard your request. The second part is no. Hey, I've decided that I cannot support this, but make sure you say no to the task, not to the person, right? Say no actually, there's a typo in this slide, is say no to the task, not to the person, or say no to this particular occasion, but not to the person that you are you're speaking to. So they feel better about, oh, okay, you don't have time this time, or I'm not the right person to talk about this, so that they don't feel hurt because they feel like personally attacked by you. The last yes is a question mark to generate possibilities before you're turning on the other side. So instead of saying like, hey, I cannot do this, and that's it, end of conversation, you actually said, well, I cannot do this, but how about X, Y, and Z? Maybe someone else could do it. Maybe, we could try a different approach, easier to do. So how to say a positive no? Try the yes, no, yes framework. In my course, I'll dive into deeper notion of this that you can explore. So the last C in this 5C framework is related to commit and celebrate. Make sure you always give people kudos publicly. Celebrate the small wins. And this on left-hand side is just one example, that one slide that I built to give credits to all my engineers working in different aspects, have their different personality, and how I show and make a public, commitment to elevate their presence and their contribution to the projects. So commit and celebrate. Now, with that, I just like to recap the 4 mindset that we covered today. Most importantly, trust must be earned. So think about various ways that you can build trust. Commit to the problem, not the solution. You're creating the solution together by co-creating and co-elevating your team, and make sure it's an iterative process that you're continuing to make it better over time. And here are the 5C framework. Make sure you check them out and check out Sachin's talk. And here are some additional readings that you can look into. And last but not least, a QR code to watch my course that goes into more deeper concepts and examples on some of this ideas that we talk about today. And thank you so much today for joining my talk. I hope you enjoy it, and please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to hear from you and get feedback from you. All right, thank you. Bye.